Mercedes' shocking announcement. So we're going to be going through that and 3 other stories in today's video. So make sure to like this video, and if you want more Mercedes news content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting that red button down below. The first story is Mercedes make a shocking announcement that Lewis Hamilton's time with Mercedes may be coming to an end. Lewis Hamilton has claimed that he doesn't dream of another spell of Mercedes dominance as his career comes to a close, instead wishing for a close on-track battle between the top teams. The British driver is currently enduring the longest race win drought of his career, having not tasted glory since the penultimate round of the 2021 championship. Instead, a different period of dominance is already well underway, with Max Verstappen on track to claim his 3rd successive world title. With Hamilton's career entering its twilight years, the chances of the legendary Briton securing his 8th world title are becoming more and more slim. Speaking about his hopes for the future, Hamilton told the BBC Checkered Flag podcast, "As a sport, we have to work. We have to have a conversation about how we can set it up to be better for the future. So we have tighter races where the pack is closer, and we have close battles between Red Bull and Ferrari and Mercedes, Aston Martin that would be epic. That's my dream because that's when I grew up racing karts. It was wheel-to-wheel close battling." Hamilton then claimed that he wasn't dreaming of another period of notching up comfortable driver's titles at the front of the field. "I don't dream of having a dominant period ever again, for myself, like winning multiple championships in a row. But the hope is that you would be in battle at least." This was supposed to be a quiet week off, following a back-to-back in Austria and Britain, and ahead of another back-to-back in Hungary and the Netherlands. But a thunderbolt from the clouds came down on Monday, with the shocking news that Daniel Ricciardo was coming back to the grid. After just 10 races, AlphaTauri and Red Bull had seen enough from Nick de Vries. The rookie was out, and Ricciardo was in, on loan to AlphaTauri starting with the Hungarian Grand Prix. Still, with F1 on a bye week following the British Grand Prix, it is time to take stock of just where each of the 10 teams are ahead of Budapest. Working through the field from the bottom of the constructors' standings to the top, what is the biggest question facing each team right now? We have finally reached the front row of our virtual walk through the grid, bringing us to Mercedes. The once dominant force in F1 is still looking at the rear wing of Red Bull. So where do they go from here? And how can they get back to the front? Stop me if you have heard this before. Mercedes has a problem with their car. Last year was all about porpoising, as to use Toto Wolff's own words. The team got the physics wrong in designing the W13. For many, the culprit was the team's zero-pod design, and the team even had concerns that it would pose a risk to drivers on the track. That led to an incredible moment from the last season of Drive to Survive, when Wolff raised his concerns with the other team principals, and Red Bull's Christian Horner told him there was a simple fix: change your bleeping car. Mercedes finally did change the car, but it took until the European stretch of the calendar for the team to come up with some answers. That did lead to a late-season surge from George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, as the team scored their first double podium finish of the year in Belgium, followed by another double podium result in the Dutch Grand Prix the next week out. Eventually, the Silver Arrows scored their first and only win of the season in the Brazilian Grand Prix, when Russell won his first F1 race. While Mercedes was 66 points behind Ferrari for second place after the Austrian Grand Prix, the Silver Arrows closed to within 19 points of the Scuderia ahead of the season finale. While Ferrari ultimately held on to second, it was a strong charge from Mercedes, and it offered hope that 2023 could be different. Instead, there have been more struggles, and while Mercedes has caught Aston Martin and slid into second place in the constructors' standings, they are still trying to figure out the W14. The zero-pod design was shelved ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix, but the team is still looking for the complete solution to their woes with, as Wolff says, Diva 2.0. "I thought at Silverstone, based on our historic performance, was the best shot, but it wasn't," said Wolff to assembled media at Silverstone. "So maybe there's another track where we have the best shot, because the characteristics of the car have changed. I always believe that we can beat Max with a good group of people, best drivers. We just have to give them a car that is more predictable and not the Diva 2.0, and much more complicated than the first one." The second story is Mercedes explain what went wrong at Silverstone. Formula One is a sport where tire decisions can make or break a race, And Mercedes technical director James Allison has shed light on the reasoning behind the split strategy and tire choices during the British Grand Prix. Analyzing the decisions made for George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in a video for Mercedes' YouTube channel, Allison provided insight into the team's thought process and the factors that influenced their choices. Russell managed P5 in the race, while seven-time world champion Hamilton took P3. The decision to start Russell on soft tires and Hamilton on medium tires was a result of careful evaluation and consideration. Allison explained that during the weekend, they noticed that all the tires, once they reached racing temperature, performed similarly. The soft tire provided better performance at the beginning, but struggled towards the end of its life, while the hard tire had better warm-up characteristics, but performed less favorably at the start. The team's objective was to maximize the chances of a strong overall result. Considering their car's performance on the soft tires during Friday's long runs, and with George starting ahead of Lewis on the grid, the decision was made to equip George with soft tires. Allison said of the choice, "We'd seen that our car had been pretty good on the soft tire when we did our long runs on the Friday, and we felt with George being in front of Lewis on the grid, giving him the soft tire would give him his best chance of jumping past someone at the start, and indeed that's what happened. George managed to leapfrog one of the Ferraris in the start, so good result there and what we hoped for from the choice. As the team's focus was on achieving a good overall result, it didn't make sense for Hamilton to attempt to overtake his teammate. The medium tire was a strong race tire, capable of lasting longer, which aligned with their expectations of a one-stop strategy. It also provided Hamilton with the chance to run in free air towards the upper end of the strategy window. Allison explained, "In the end, that played out beautifully for Lewis as well, because by being able to run long, he was still on the track when the safety car came out, and that played really nicely into his hands. So a bit of a bummer for George to lose out under that safety car, but them's the breaks. And overall, splitting the strategy just gave us our best chance, our best odds of having a good overall team result, and actually for each individual driver it made sense as well." Mercedes says it anticipates its new front wing to yield greater benefits when Formula One visits circuits that feature slower corners. Mercedes introduced the updated component at last weekend's British Grand Prix, the latest revision to its W14. Lewis Hamilton claimed a podium finish at Silverstone while George Russell classified in fifth spot. Mercedes was able to consolidate second place in the Constructors' Championship and moved 22 points clear of Aston Martin, with Ferrari falling further adrift. Mercedes technical director James Allison expressed optimism that the updated component has worked and that its benefits will deliver greater gains at slow-speed circuits. "The new front wing is of course designed to make us go faster. That's why we do all our things," said Allison. "The specific characteristics of this new front wing that we are excited about is that it should improve the balance and performance of the car through the slower range of the corners. Now, Silverstone is famous for lots of things, but lots and lots of slow corners is not one of them. What we took as a comfort from Silverstone is that in the slower parts of the track, we were looking pretty decently competitive. That's a tick in the box for this new front wing. I guess it will only be when we get to Hungary, which is a track made up almost entirely of slower stuff, that we'll get to know for sure. Early signs are promising. The new front wing seemed to do what we expected, and hopefully it will bring us more at tracks which have a wider range of slow corners. Hungary's Hungaroring will host the next round of the season next weekend. The third story is Toto Wolff is doing everything to stop Red Bull dominance. Toto Wolff has demanded that Mercedes search every nook and cranny to make the W14 as fast as Red Bull. Max Verstappen won his sixth race on the bounce at the British Grand Prix, but behind him came Lando Norris in a vastly improved McLaren, which emulates many of the RB19's key features. Lewis Hamilton couldn't pass the younger Brit despite being on soft tires compared to Norris's hards at a safety car restart, and George Russell failed to pass Oscar Piastri for fourth behind them. Wolff, while impressed by McLaren's sudden speed, is not pleased that his team can't find the same correct answers as their customer outfit. "I think what you see on the outside, which is only half the information, is that the car looks like a Red Bull," Wolff said. "This type of design seems to be on the right path, but getting there it's easier said than done. Each of us had cars that looked like Red Bulls in the wind tunnel, and they just didn't measure up performance-wise. We should leave no stone unturned and maybe look at it again because another team, McLaren, just found another second in performance, and we haven't." George Russell is unconcerned that Mercedes will fall behind in the Formula One development war going on between the teams behind Red Bull. Both Aston Martin and McLaren have used their resources to their advantage to catch up to the top teams, challenging Mercedes and Ferrari, with Aston starting the season strongly with 7 podiums from 10 races. The current 2022 regulations rely heavily on ground effects, which is influenced by the ride heights. This varies between cars and is a factor that has created the current swings in performance between teams. But Russell is unconcerned that it will play too much of influence on Mercedes when asked by media, including RacingNews365.com. I'm sure that's potentially a factor. If teams are developing their cars in different windows, if you're developing slightly higher ride height or slightly lower ride heights, you can't get the car in the right window for every corner type. Perhaps that is a reason for the fluctuation. We don't really have the answers, to be honest. We're just focused in on ourselves and trying to make our car faster across the course of a season. While the 2026 power unit regulations have been decided, Russell says he would love drivers to have input on the car design. "I trust on the power unit side that it's going to continue to innovate and we'll be in a good place by the time we get to 2026 with all of the manufacturers agreed," he said. "The car regulations are a great opportunity for the FIA and F1 to decide upon something really cool, really fast, really efficient, and we'd love as drivers to be a part of that conversation." Ex-F1 driver David Coulthard believes the delay to Lewis Hamilton signing a new deal with Mercedes suggests he has doubts over the team's rate of progress. Hamilton, 38, has been locked in negotiations with Mercedes for months over an extension to his current contract, which expires at the end of the 2023 season.